Back again YouTube, and welcome back to the coding workshop. And in today's video we're going to be building out another component within our project, and that is our flash message component. And what this component is responsible for is to provide the user with a feedback in the form of a message that is declared within the current session, but as soon as the browser is refreshed, that message is deleted, hence why it's called flash message. So I mentioned sessions, which means we're going to be using our session component, right? But before we get started off on that, I actually want to introduce PHP traits. And this is now a good point, I feel a good point in the project to do that. So what is trait? These are a simple mechanism which allows us to reuse blocks of code throughout several independent class or component that we've got in our project. Traits help to overcome the limitation of single inheritance language such as PHP. And what I mean by a single inheritance is that a child class can only extend from one parent class, right? A trait class is pretty much similar to a regular class in terms of we can define access modifiers for methods, i.e. we could call our methods public, private, or protected. We can even declare properties in traits, but there's just a little caveat to using properties in traits, in that the class we then use it in cannot then declare that same property, else we're going to get a fatal error. So, but for our use case, we won't be using properties, so that's not really something that we should have an issue with. And note that we cannot instantiate traits on their own. We're simply using traits as a means to extend class inheritance with methods that we can then reuse anywhere within our project. So that's our use case for traits, and we're going to implement it within this project. And I'm going to actually go ahead and do that first before we start implementing the flash component, because we're going to rely on this trait method to do that. So you can see that I've got a trait directory that was done from day one, and it's been sitting there ready waiting for us to start coding inside of it. And the first trait I'm going to create, I'm going to say a new file, I'm going to call it system trait, and it's got that .php extension, right? Again, it's like a normal PHP class, so we're going to declare it the same. So, well, not the same exactly, but you're going to see how I declare it. It'll be PHP declare strict types namespace magma, and we're now in that traits directory. So all we declare trait is we use a trait keyword, like so, trait, right? And we call this class I keep saying class, this trait, we call this trait system trait. So it's pretty much similar to a class in terms of how we've laid it out so far, with the only difference being the keyword trait. So the idea behind this is I'm going to take you back to our session directory, and you can see we got our session factory. Our session factory is only responsible for creating a session object, which is what we got down here, right? Then we got our session manager, which initialize that session factory and create that native session storage. But how do we actually get this to work in our application? So this is where I'm going to use trait, and I'm going to create a method that we're going to pull into our application bootstrap file when we come to create our application. And this is how we're going to initialize it within our bootstrap. I mean, I could have actually just bring this class within our bootstrap file, but I want to use trait, I want to introduce it, and I want to make it part of our project. And the method I'm going to create is a public static method, right? And I'm going to call it session init. Now this method has one argument, and it's going to be a boolean, and it's going to be the use session global, and by default I'm going to set it to false, right? Now you can see the variable that we've created has got that global name, so that tells you that we're going to be using that global component that we created in the last video. So I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to use use Magma global, get that global manager, and I actually want to bring my session manager class in. This one I want to bring that into my trait, in my trait. So I'm going to say session equal new session manager. But this is a very small class that only contains one method. I don't want to actually initialize it, so I'm going to actually set this method to static. Right, then back over here, get rid of that new key, get rid of that, and say colon initialize. That's much cleaner, much simpler, because that class only contains one method. There's no need to initialize it. So we'll convert that initialized method into a static method and then call it like this. Now I want to check if we've got session enable. So I want to say if exclamation session, if it's not enabled, I'm going to throw a new base logic exception. Right, and I'm going to simply pass a message in that says please enable session within your session.yaml configuration. And we haven't created these configuration files yet. It's got that YAML extension. We're going to be doing that in a separate video. So, but we know that that's where the config is going to be coming from that YAML file. All right. So I'm going to put an else statement. So we're saying if session is not enabled, throw that exception. Then I'm going to say else if use session global equal true. Then I'm going to say global manager, and I'll use that set method, that set. And if I take you back to the global manager, that set method has two arguments, which is the string, which is a key, and the value, which is mixed, right? So I'm going to set the key as global session, and the value is going to be that entire session object, which is stored within that session variable. Right, so it's true, do that bit, else just return that session object. And this session object is going to give us access to, let me pull this file up, it's going to give us access to all these methods within this session class. Right, let's close that. Save that, and you see it's already brought in all of our namespaces, so that's fine. And that's pretty much it for our session init method. This is going to be a method that we execute within our application bootstrap file, and is going to enable session throughout our entire project, or give us the ability to use session throughout our entire project. Right, so now we've done that, I want to actually just close it out, close these out, finish with them. This will be pushed to GitHub, guys, so don't worry about it. When we finish this video, it will be on GitHub, ready to be download, clone. You can mess about with it how you see fit. So we want to actually now get to our Flash component. So I'm going to go ahead and create the necessary files that we need for this component. And the first one is going to be the Flash interface .php. Then we have a Flash .php, and we're going to also put the types in a different class by itself. Not necessary, but I'm going to do it anyways. Flash types .php, and it's got an exception directory as well, keeping it consistent. This is how we've been doing it, and this is how we're going to continue doing it. So our inheritance class only has two methods, right? So I'm going to build that out. The PHP declare strict types equal 1, be namespace magma, and now we're in that Flash directory. And say interface Flash interface. Now the two methods that we're going to create, one is called add and one is called get. So the add method simply adds a message within the session that we want to display to the user, and let's just declare that, and it's going to be declared as a static method. It's going to be public static function add, and this method has two arguments and they're both strings. So the first is the actual message that we want to display, and the second is string, which is a type, which is what type it is, and it could be 4 possible type. It could be warning, danger, info, and the next one that I can't remember at the minute. But I'm assuming if you've come across this before, you would have known, or you will know what the 4 types are. And this is going to be a void because it's got no return type, right? So I'm going to give it a description. It says add a Flash message stored within the session, and you can see that it's actually helped us to populate the parameters and the return. And the second method is going to be get, and this has no argument and it's got no return type because the return type is going to be mixed. As I said, when PHP 8 comes out, we're going to be coming back and fixing this up a bit. And it's got no body. All right, and all it does is gets all the message within that session. Get all message within the session, and to get that message, it's going to take a special key which we're going to define within our Flash class, and that's it. That's all the method within our Flash interface. If we go to our Flash class, we can now start to build that out. Declare strict types equal 1, namespace is magma Flash, be class Flash, and I'm going to implement that Flash interface like that. Now this class hasn't got a constructor because it does not need one, because we're not going to instantiate this class. We've got static methods. Right, so we're going to go ahead now and start building out the two methods that we've declared within our interface. Be public, be static function add, returns a void, right? Then we'll say string message string type, and we're going to actually set a default for the type in a bit, but the message is going to always be required. Then this is my implementation of Flash, and what we've just done with the trait, I'm going to do something with my global components. I'm going to bring that in. So use magma the global manager. This will be global manager. Right. So I'm going to say session equal global manager get global session. Now we have just set that global session to take in that entire session object within this trait. We've just set that option right here. So when we initialize our application, we're declaring or setting this global session to take in that entire session object. So in other components, we can actually get that session object using this get method. Right? I hope you're getting that. So I'm going to say if session as, right, you can see we're using the as method within that session, and this is that method that we're referring to. Where is it? This as method is what we're currently referring to, right? And we're checking if we've got that key, which we have not set yet, but I'm going to do that within a constant. So I'm going to call it protected constant, call it flash key, and the string is going to be flash message, right? So we're checking if we've got that key, which is going to be self flash key. That's how we access that constant, by using that self keyword. Then say if, I'm going to say session, I'm going to set method, I'm going to provide it with that key and set it to an empty array. Now outside that if statement, I want to say session, I want to use the set array method. Again, I'm going to check it by that key, but this time we're going to pass in some actual key value pair, and the first is going to be the message, which is going to pipe to that message argument, and the second is a type, and pipe to that type argument, right? And that's it. That's all we add messages to the session, by setting the message and the type to this flash key right here, or this session key. The next method is going to be public static function, and that's the get method. I'm going to say session equal global manager get, and we're going to get that global session again, and we want to execute that flush method within our session, which is this method. This flush method is what we're then calling. I'm going to say session flush, and I want to get the key, which is going to be self that flash key, right? Right, now we get an error right here because we've not declared a static in our interface. So let's go back to our interface and say static, and the error is now gone. And that's it for our flash component. It's very simple in terms of what it's doing. Right, so let's now bring in our flash flash types. I'm going to say use magma flash types, which we've not yet created. So let's actually create that. Be PHP declare strict types equal true namespace, yeah, just flash. I'm gonna say clash, not clash. I'm gonna say class flash types, and it's going to be a class with just some constants. So I'm gonna say const success equal success. Say const is warning equal warning. Say const is danger. That's the next one. That's going to be danger cons equal info equal info, and these are going to be the 4 types of message we can display. Obviously, if we want to implement more, we can come and assign it right here. So let's save that, close it out. We've got it in. Then we want to say equal flash types equal success. Then we want to go back to our interface and we want to say equal flash types success, and that should fix that error, which it has. Right, so that's how we set a default for the flash type, and we're going to default it to success. And that's pretty much it for our flash component.